Welcome to episode 40, if you can believe it, of Momentous Live. I'm Tristan Jutra. To my side is...
William Sower.
And below him...
I'm Gray Williams. Hello, everyone.
Back officially. Gray jumped in late in the game last week for a fun little surprise, but now he's back for the full episode, done from his multi-week teaching stint. Great to have you back in the hot seat there, Gray.
Thank you. It's good to be back.
Are you ready to talk about horrifying space news, among other things?
Yeah. Well, let's cut right to the chase. Yeah.
But first, a couple of bits of follow up. One, a few months ago, we had a quick chat about some earbuds by a brand called Nothing, and they were some nice looking earbuds. They were not nothing. But they were comparable quality, some argued, to say Apple's AirPods and the like. But the kicker was only $99, and we had various chat about that at the time, and whether we liked it or not. It had a clear aesthetic. I think Will was kind of into it. I was kind of into it, but a lot of us are kind of even more into the integration that the Apple AirPods offer with Apple's ecosystem there. So now we got a new color. So we've got black and we've got white. Does this change anyone's opinion on this?
Well, looking at the earbud market right now, it seems like you're either going proprietary, so if you've got a OnePlus, you're using Oppos. If you've got a Samsung, you can use, and sure, people will sort of cross the borders there a little bit, but for the most part, I think that Apple's really the only one that's kind of got solid lock-in for their brands. So you've got and I guess Beats is kind of ubiquitous across both the brands now.
Also owned by Apple, which is handy.
Also owned by Apple, yeah. But there isn't really anybody else that kind of stands out with a unique, sexy headset in my mind. And I've always said, if I was going to buy an Android, it would have to be a device that runs just plain Android. So at the time, that was Google's phones. This is kind of the same sort of thing. I was going to use something that was other than AirPods. I'd probably rock these. Status has a couple. They've got their between earbuds that I think that we're going for $99 on Black Friday as well. But they're not quite as striking as these. They're stylish, but they're these things have something's got an 80s analog feel to it, doesn't it?
Indeed, yeah. So you got black and clear or white and clear. Will, if someone put a gun to your head, which seems to be a recurring theme here on Momentous Live, what would you choose?
I'd probably get the Apple AirPods.
Oh no, but of the two nothing
of
ones,
these
black,
two, I get the clear
or the
one.
white and clear. No, but they're both clear. But there's black and clear and white and clear.
White and clear.
Oh, you say you'd stick with the white, which is kind of the Apple color. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. It's funny that after all these years, going all the way back to the original iPod headphones, that Apple has stuck with white. They have not deviated from that. That's so locked into their brand, because people are like, when are they going to do black AirPods or red AirPods or AirPods to match all the different colors they have of iPhones and iPads and even iMacs and MacBooks now? But they've stuck to the white. And so
that's what Beats are for.
Oh, there you go. I hear Beats are for bass as well.
Bass.
Now, Grant, as a marketing guy, do you think this is purely a branding thing? Why hasn't Apple budged on you? Don't you think they could get some more sales, take some away from Sony or the other non-Beats brands? I mean, they don't mind if people buy Beats, of course, but
it's interesting because we actually saw Coca-Cola go through this. When they introduced Coke Zero, they put it into a black can, and now if you go to buy Coke Zero, you get Coke Zero sugar in a red can. They were actually starting to see that there was some fall off in brand recognition because that's their color.
Interesting.
And so looking at this, I think the brand identity that comes along with that white is probably worth more to Apple than the additional sales that they would get from other colors. And to Will's point, they've got Beats if they want to have the all the colors everywhere, but I don't foresee them ever doing an AirPods Pro as it were. It's interesting because with the most recent Pro keyboards and Pro mice, they did have a graphite available. They're not anymore.
Mhm.
So that dark, I've actually got one of the darker trackpads, but they don't. That's been cut off. So I think it's that consolidation of brand identity, which was the thing that Steve was famous for when he came back, right? They took all of those clones and all the lines, and they took it into a matrix of 4, right? You know, consumer desktop, consumer laptop, pro desktop, pro laptop. And so I think they probably started to look at themselves and go, okay, we're gonna pull back in a couple of places here, and the choice of your keyboard color, the choice of your headphone color, it's not on the list if you're going to be an Apple customer.
On the space gray mouse, trackpad, and keyboard, my theory is that they're going to wait until iMac Pro and or Mac Pro, the M series versions, and then they'll re-release those with with the Touch ID and the keyboard, et cetera, et cetera. But as for the Coke Zero Sugar, whose branding we all love now, what's your verdict on the taste? Because we've talked, Will and I have talked while you were away, and we talked with Jamie as well and we did some blind taste tests on that. What's your verdict on the new formula of Coke Zero?
It might be sacrilege, but I like it. It tastes like cloves. It tastes like fall. It's delicious. So
if only it were pumpkin spice,
right?
Will, yeah, I think you and I both agree. We preferred it as well.
Yeah, I don't really mind it. I mean, some people are like really angry about it. I was just like, I barely noticed it, and it's fine. It's okay. If anything, I like it maybe a little bit better. It wasn't like shocking to me. It tastes a little bit different. But the other thing is, you got to remember about Coke or Coke Zero is sometimes it tastes different depending on what state you're in or country you're in. So it didn't really throw me off that much that it still tasted like it was in the same ecosystem or color gambit or tonal range, whatever you want to say. Like it's in the same key. It's in the key of Coke. So I it's not like it tasted alien to me. It tasted like Dr. Pepper or something. It still tasted like Coke to me, or Coke Zero. So but I've heard people online just get really angry about it. There's a blogger I follow gets really angry about it. So,
well, yeah, that's what people like to do online. So if you want if you manage to get one of the first 100 pair of Ear One Black Edition earbuds, wireless earbuds, they'll be numbered and engraved, and only available at there was a pop-up shop that was 3 days ago in Covent Garden in London, England. So I'm not sure there's any left
on that one.
Hop my DeLorean.
Wow.
Exactly. A bit more follow-up. Another story we touched on a few months ago about Roku and YouTube having a little spat regarding YouTube/Google's terms of use for, I believe, data gathering and the like from their apps. And Roku basically said, hey, no one else has the same demands that you do, YouTube. And part of the fallout there was the removal of the YouTube TV app at the time. And we made very clear this was the YouTube TV app. But now it sounds like the stakes have been raised a little bit. And unless they come to a deal, the actual proper YouTube app will be unavailable from Roku's channel store as of December 9th. So this is for everyone with like a Roku streaming stick or a little set-top box or whatever. So if you don't have the YouTube app on your Roku device, go and download it now, because in a few days, and 2 days from now, it might not be available anymore. Gray, is this another case of like internet giants like having their pissing matches and regular folks like us getting caught in the crossfire? Is there more to this?
Well, I mean, to a degree, like the challenging thing here is that Roku is standing up for ordinary users, right? Like you have not given your express permission for this data you shared with Google, and we don't think that it should be. And Google saying, well, it's my party and I'll cry if I want to, and doing some pretty scummy stuff, right? Like, they added a backdoor through the regular YouTube apps to YouTube TV, which is, it's just like, okay, so if you're going to fight about this thing, and you're now going to start like messing around with your own app ecosystem so that you can still get the service out to clients, and so you can kind of inflict maximum damage when you decide to pull out.
Yeah, to basically remove any leverage that Roku might have there.
Yeah, this is just another one of those moments where I'm like, Google, come on, guys, like really, the data on Roku subscribers was worth this kind of bad press and me being increasingly frustrated with you, like a whole lot of other people are, like, I'm getting tired of being tired of Google.
And so this doesn't just affect their streaming sticks and set-top boxes. Roku software is also baked into a number of smart TVs now, right?
Mm-hmm. It is, yeah. And when you start thinking about those relationships with TV manufacturers, Google was not able to make a lot of those work. They tried with some Chrome stuff a while back and couldn't even get it off the ground. If you remember their first Chrome Cube thing, it never flew. And just every time they got into negotiations with a television manufacturer, it kind of fell flat. And we've seen a number of different operating systems and different implementations on TVs, but Google's never really been able to like stick the landing on it. People have kind of looked at it, and when there was Android TV, Firefox TV, all this sort of stuff, where are they now? Right? Tizen's probably the closest thing. LG's got their WebOS, but looking at this with TCL and companies like that, where their partner Roku is now saying, we can't provide this experience to our customers because Google is basically bullying us. Does that make anybody else in the industry really eager to work with Google? I think they're about to find out that actually there are other people out there that maybe you shouldn't push around because there are going to be consequences to this. I don't think this is such a weird hill to die on.
Yeah, and it's somewhat reminiscent of 10 years ago, 10 and a half years ago now, when Google was insisting on access to a certain amount of customer data from Apple for Google Maps on iPhones, and Apple basically said, "Nope, sorry," and Google was refusing to give vector-based maps and turn-by-turn directions to the Google Maps app on iPhones for that reason. So then Apple went and made Apple Maps, and that was a whole debacle, and it took a few years for that to get up to speed, and it's much, much better now, of course. But it's, Apple has the wherewithal, and the resources to go and develop their own, mapping apps, and they have the huge platform on iOS. But Roku, they can't go build another YouTube. Like the odds of anyone else out there building a competing video platform that has the scope of YouTube, it seems vanishingly small, unless it's
like the really easy way. You basically have a web browser that takes you to the mobile version of YouTube, right? Their TVs can run it. This is like that native app. It's nice that it's fast, but realistically speaking, yeah, they could skin a web app, and that's that, right? Like it
sounds like a sweet solution.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's a reference. Go ahead, Will.
The other thing is that just taking this maybe a bit long term or sideways a bit is, the three of us worked for a major retail brand at one point that didn't necessarily have the best reputation with consumers on some things. And the thing is, when you're a monopoly or when there's very few competitors in that market, you can get away with a bad reputation. But when there's market pressures, that bad reputation becomes a severe problem. So it's fine if you're running the show, but if something changes and you're on your way down, there's not going to be positive brand recognition or attachment to your brand. People are using your brand because they have to use your brand, not because they want to use your brand.
And we've talked about that in the context of the creator economy, just the amount of power that YouTube has. If someone, posts a video that, for whatever reason triggers something on YouTube's end, you could get your video demonetized or under review, and you could lose all sorts of momentum and all sorts of actual dollars just because you had a word in your title that may be deemed controversial and totally anodyne for all intents and purposes. But it's just a question of that lack of actual market dynamics, because Vimeo is not an actual competitor. Dailymotion is not an actual competitor. It's going to be a while before some of the other third party like Rumble and those are going to be competitors, because they have their own kind of ideological bents as well. Who knows how they'll ever go mainstream? So yeah, I mean, it's almost like we're at this point where we're too big to fail. Like whether it's Google, Apple, Amazon, and whatnot, and you don't actually have proper markets anymore. But I mean, aside from the government stepping in and and that rarely works out well because a lot of times they don't know what they're doing either. So
These things are funny things too. Like, I mean, if you go back 25 years, did anyone think Blockbuster was going to go under? I
yeah.
mean, like, technology and things can change. I mean, Blockbuster was making decisions on what movies people could see. They could ban movies that would not be distributed to all their centers. And then people, like, I remember Apocalypse Now. I remember going up and saying, oh, I'm 16 years old. I want to watch Apocalypse Now. I heard it was a good movie, whatever. And they're like, yeah, wait, Blockbuster doesn't carry it. So it's just one of those things where where's Blockbuster now? They're a bit of a joke. So you never know when things are going to change, and especially if people don't have any affection for you or brand recognition or positive feelings towards your brand. Like Apple has some very hard, diehard fans. Sony PlayStation has diehard fans. These are things where if there were some market pressures, people choose these things. I don't see anyone choosing Google if there's an actual competitor in the marketplace.
So with that impending technological shift in mind, I guess we'll just wait for Meta and their metaverse to take YouTube's place as the distributor of user-generated video content. And I know that would thrill Gray to no end.
Because they have a positive reputation as well.
Yeah. Out of the frying pan into the fire. Speaking of terrible things, there was Apple tracking devices being used in thefts of high-end cars in the York region. According to police, they've discovered a new way in which thieves are using AirTags to track and eventually steal high-end cars. And so basically, you pop an Apple AirTag into that you've paired with your own iPhone and hide it inconspicuously on someone's vehicle. And if you can act before the person who's in the car, their phone detects the AirTag. That's one of the safety features that Apple did incorporate, is that if someone slips an AirTag into your backpack or whatever, you'll get an alert on your phone saying there's an AirTag near you. But maybe with the size of certain cars and the like, that won't show up, or at least it takes a little while for it to show up. So the idea being that if there's certain cars that have been targeted, people can follow you home a little later on in the middle of the night, steal your car. Gray, is this actually something to be worried about, or is this just like fear mongering by the media?
This is a great headline. So I mean, the real problem here is actually the OBD2 sensor, or the data port in the car, because that's what's being used to reprogram the car to start with keys that didn't belong to the users. Here's the thing: you don't have to break into the car to learn things about people. You could run the plates. It's $50 in most provinces to be able to run the plates and figure out where somebody lives if their address is on file. You can follow them home. The AirTag is it's a bizarre way of doing this. If someone does have an iPhone, they will get an alert. I had one of Ray's backpacks, which we have AirTags in the back of the Mini. Now it's a Mini Countryman, so it's a BMW X1. That's a pretty big car. And within seconds of me taking off, it was probably about a minute, I got a notification saying that there's this AirTag on me that doesn't belong to me. I guess because it could tell we're moving in the same direction, same speed. It's all together. If you've got an Android, well, tough as your luck, I guess.
That's the key. Yeah, that's right. That's the big hole in that whole safety plan.
So you've got to find somebody who's extremely rich, who has good taste in cars but terrible taste in phones. I kid. But I honestly, I don't know how many they said that they had on this. I would be surprised if it was more than a couple. And in that case, again, it's so far to go down that road. Because the other thing as well now is you've got an iCloud account and IP addresses that are attached to these AirTags. So if they found one of these things, then this is a short rope back to the person involved. I don't imagine that these people are geniuses. So their operational security, I think, is probably not great. Their fashion sense is good though. It's great hoodie. So yeah, I mean, media is going to media, and they mediated on this one. So
exactly. Well, what sort of security protocols do you use around your vehicle? Anything above what the manufacturer supplies?
You trying to dox me so people
Yeah,
can take
yes.
my car?
Exactly, and we'll be sharing your address later as well.
Yeah, no, just a regular like a alarm and locks and the basics kind of thing. Basic security, nothing aftermarket in terms of blades that come out below the car or flamethrowers that regular alarms and locks.
Now, correct me if I'm mistaken, but there was a while on a previous car where you actually weren't locking the car. Why don't you tell us about that?
I don't remember what you're talking about.
In the parkade of your apartment with your old car.
So it's
And
less
you-
expensive than getting a
you-
window repaired.
You stopped locking your car because
Oh yeah, I stopped locking my car in this one building because they would break the glass. So I would leave the car unlocked and the glove compartment open so that they could go in there. Because they weren't stealing the car, they were snatching or grabbing. So I actually got my window broken 3 times. So, and it was that one building that was near transit stations where it was, if you looked on the map of VPD, it was one of the biggest hotbeds of break-ins into cars. So yeah,
I get the feeling that I'd probably like buy a bear trap or something and just figure out some way to rig that up, because 3 window breaks, you're pushing
Yeah.
it like.
But I never got any problems after that. A couple times I came in and like they tossed, back when you had CDs in your car, they tossed my CDs on the floor or something. They weren't even taking CDs. They were looking for like sunglasses and loose change or something like that.
maybe we could devise some sort of glitter-based car security system. I had a couple issues. I've had cars broken into twice. One was in the 90s when I was rocking a 1977 Oldsmobile Delta 88, and I parked in Gastown on Alexander Street here in near downtown Vancouver area, not too far from where one of our momentous people live, and I came back to my car, and I guess after a couple hours, I don't even remember what I was doing. And I had a cardboard box, a square cardboard box in the back seat that went missing. The window was broken, that was missing. And then, unfortunately, like a ding dong, I had left my sunglasses case, and I had some really nice Ray-Bans, not Wayfarers. They were another more rare style Ray-Bans, and those went gone. I'd gotten a really good deal, though. So Save on Foods, too, only $50. They were gone. But the joke was on them, because aside from the sweet sunglasses, the big box that was the real jackpot supposedly was a box of like 99-cent like clearance audio cassettes, like with like music from bands that no one's ever heard of. So I'm not sure how much they got for those on the downtown east side. And then the other one, again, not too far, probably just a couple blocks away from that, and in a parkade at Gastown, and that was I think around 2011. I like a fool, I had left my Gen 2 iPod, so 2002 model, with the I guess it had the click wheel, and I think it was in the glove box too. But there's some telltale wires plugged into the aux port and or the cigarette lighter for power, and that was enough for someone to bust the window in and dig around, and they grabbed my old timey iPod. So I was a little choked about that. So that's how about you? Go ahead, Will.
Oh, I was just going to say, just to be clear, I lock my car now. Let's just be clear about that now that I'm no longer in that building. I do lock my car. The only thing that's happened on my block was, and I was super lucky, I happened to park around the corner because someone was parked in front of my place. I parked around the corner, and everyone on this one block got graffiti on their car. It was like 10 cars, and they were graffitiing like ACAB on people's car, ACAB on people's car. And I just happened to be on a side street, and I was like the one person that didn't get bombed. So I think my neighbor was a little bit like, was it you? You're the only car that didn't get hit. I'm like, I swear I just parked around the corner last night.
And you're like, yeah, I agree. All cops are bosses. Yeah. So speaking of bosses, the police have offered up a number of tips to keep your vehicle safe, including if you own an iPhone, you may receive a notification that an AirTag is nearby, so keep eyes open for that. If possible, park your vehicle in a locked garage, as most vehicles are stolen from a driveway. Well, we'll see how well that works for you, because people can slip in under through the security gates, behind cars. Use a steering wheel lock, which also works as a visual deterrent. What is this, like 1993? Is anyone?
U.S. police gave me one for free. They said it was on Twitter. They're like, the next 3 people that come down, we've got. I lived across the road. I wandered in. I'm like, hey, I heard you guys have the steering wheel locks. Like, yeah, they're brand new, bright yellow. If you're ever in danger, it's also a great club.
True.
Yeah.
True. Hence the name.
The club.
So, do you still use it?
Oh yeah.
Wow.
Oh yeah.
For the official record, you still use it. All right.
Also, for the official record, I have flamethrowers on the side of my car as well.
Also, they say to install a lock on your car's data port. So, Gray, you had mentioned the OBD2 port on underneath the steering wheel of most cars, newer than 1996, I believe. Police said the simple device can be purchased online and blocks access to the vehicle's computer port. So I did a little searching online, and you can find those, $20 and up. But the one trick is being able to secure it in. Because mounts vary from model of car to model of car, and sometimes you have to do some modifications to make that. Gray, do you remember? It was probably maybe 8 years ago or so. You and I both picked up in the States. We got the automatic OBD2 port dongle, which was great. It's synced with an app on your phone via Bluetooth, and it would keep track of where you were driving. I had this whole thing going where I would have data going automatically to a Google Sheet via IFTTT to track my mileage and so on. But that fell victim to the Internet of Things economy because they kind of shut down and the apps and the servers and stuff don't work anymore. So I was a little bummed about that. Have you found...
They just sent an email, and actually what they did was they offered a discount to their premium one. But of course, we bought that down in the States because it wasn't available in Canada. Remember that? We were in Portland, I think.
Yes,
and
indeed. But they don't even. I don't think they even do the premium one anymore. I think they're
no. It's
have you found it
at the time they'd offered us $50 off their, I think, $200.
Thanks, guys.
It's funny because I've got it sitting around here somewhere. I think it's on my workbench because I pulled it out because for the longest time it was just plugged into my OBD2.
Yeah.
And so I bought a dash cam sense that uses the OBD2 as a power port. So when you get in, you just click the button, it sends power up there, and that way you don't have to worry about fooling around with fuses and the cigarette jack as well. So it's just a nice way to do it.
Have you found a suitable replacement for automatic that has that nice sort of app integration?
No. I mean, so Rogers has their service, which is very similar, but you have to pay for it every month. It's software as a service subscription.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Pass.
That's a no for me, dog.
Yeah, too many more subscriptions. So, in other news of things that are mysterious and borderline criminal, man claiming to be Bitcoin's creator wins dispute over $50 billion in Bitcoin. So the infamous Craig Wright, who for years has been insisting that he is the Bitcoin creator Satoshi Nakamoto, actually won a lawsuit against his apparent collaborator's family, is a late collaborator who passed away, but his family had been suing him for, because Craig Wright had been claiming that, he was Satoshi Nakamoto, the creator of Bitcoin, and was the owner of this wallet of heretofore untouched Bitcoins, currently worth about $50 billion. So that's what, 10,000 Bitcoin or so. But Craig Wright has never been able to demonstrate ownership of the private keys. He, all it takes is send one Satoshi, one sat, 1/100 millionth of a Bitcoin to a different wallet. That proves that you control those private wallets, and he's never done that. So he's been showing. For years he's showed up at concerts, conferences, as a speaker, and he's had people stand up and like, "You, sir, are a fraud," and he's really drawn the ire of a lot of.
I am Spartacus.
Exactly, a lot of people in the Bitcoin community, but he's been going along and he's defended himself against this lawsuit, and now he's got $100 million that he owes this family, but I don't know how he's going to cough that up because he still hasn't demonstrated that he has access to this. Gray, what is it to this story that we might be missing here? Like, how is Craig Wright going to cough up $100 million? I mean, I'm sure he's done well in other ways, but he's not $50 billion rich at this point.
I think at this point he's going to start having to start charge for autographs because I don't really know that he's got other translatable skills. This is yeah. I mean, it's talk about a Pyrrhic victory. Again, if he had access to the keys, bully for him, great, you're the guy. But at this point, it would have been so simple to prove this, and it's just with respect, he doesn't seem that smart. Like, it's just I see somebody here whose mouth is bigger than his eyes, in as much as his vision is nowhere near, I think, what whoever did originally conceive of that white paper had come up with. Craig strikes me as a guy who's just devoid of imagination. So I'm wondering how this is going to end for him, but I think if I had to narrow it down to a single word, it would be badly.
And real-time fact check wasn't 10,000 bitcoins. It was 1.1 million bitcoins. I was getting in my head confused with the fellow who bought some Papa John's pizza with 10,000 bitcoins several years ago, and that's now worth $500 million. So not
that's
50
a spicy meatball.
Yeah, exactly. Not 50 billion. So yeah, just an interesting development in that whole saga, because there were actually a couple of articles. The Wired magazine and Gizmodo had gone on the record saying that their best guess was that Craig Wright was indeed Satoshi Nakamoto, but it seems like no one in the actual Bitcoin community really buys it, and he's been unable to prove it. So this has been just like
maybe he lost the password and he's too embarrassed to say it.
Maybe they're in there's another story of someone who's been lobbying. I think it's someone in England who's been lobbying their local municipal council for the right to go and dig up the landfill where I think it was his wife had tossed the hard drive. That's who he's blaming anyway. Tossed the hard drive that had his keys, private keys there. Yeah. So good times. Oh, Craig Wright. We'll do without you. So, in other disaster news, don't fear that Eiffel Tower-sized asteroid passing Earth next week. The Absolute Unit asteroid. Absolute Unit.
Absolute Unit?
Be your DJ name.
Absolute Unit.
Asteroid 4660 Nereus has been considered as a target for space missions. And what I understand is that's going to be, was it about 11 lunar units away, something like that? Only 2.4 million miles or 3.9 million kilometers from the Earth, which sounds like a long ways away, but it's, in the grand scheme of things, is reasonably close. So it just kind of brings into focus a couple of other related stories. One, there was a few weeks ago that we didn't actually get a chance to talk to, which was the DART program. SpaceX is collaborating with NASA on the double asteroid redirection test to help save the planet from such asteroid threats in the future. Last thing you need is an extinction level event to ruin your day. But the whole concept behind that is to try to nudge a threatening asteroid in a slightly different direction. And then there's another related story too. NASA unveiling a new weapon in the war on asteroids, an Earth-loving algorithm, which is basically helping run their simulations. They're simulating catastrophe events, and how to slap asteroids with spaceships and all that kind of stuff. So we kind of got three stories that are all sort of tied together here. And I'm going to first throw to our momentous astronomy correspondent, Gray Williams, who is ever closer to getting his latest degree, post-secondary education. What's the significant? Let's start first with this near Earth encounter with an asteroid in just 4 days from now, Gray.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing: is the asteroid belt acts as a massive garbage collector for us, and so the vast majority of rocks that come into our solar system don't even really get into our orbit. It's exciting and interesting when things pass this close. It's kind of terrifying. I think I've actually said it on this podcast before. Basically, this is nature's way of saying, how's that space program coming? Because there will eventually be something that does hit this planet if there aren't these systems in place, which could actually wipe out the human race and most of the life on the planet. So, looking at that, a couple of things to do. One, don't be just here. Like, we don't have to leave Earth, but don't be just here. Mars, the moon, those are good options to start off with. There's that 2-kilometer layer of Venus's atmosphere that has actually breathable oxygen. Sure, it melts lead on the surface, but right up there, good 10. Great.
There's the real Elysium right there.
Right.
Yeah, we'll see you there, Matt Damon.
Right, that's Damon. So I mean that's pretty cool. The thing that I like though is the dart because when we're looking at this, the fully fueled kinetic impactor could be pre-positioned in Earth orbit. That is an orbital weapons platform, and if it's pointing outwards, that's awesome. If it's pointing inwards, oh man, we're dystopia, and that sucks. But
Codename GoldenEye.
right, I'm invincible. No, you weren't, Alan Cumming. He apparently just released a biography. But
really?
in any case, like orbital weapons platforms to be used against people, not so good. To be used against hostile aliens, probably don't exist. To be used against space rocks, yeah, now we're talking. This is something that I can absolutely get behind, and not in front of because that's the dangerous end.
Well, how much sleep do you lose over the notion of any number of asteroids that are zipping through our neighborhood, our solar system neighborhood here that could be the end of us anytime? And it was 60 million years ago they wiped out the dinosaurs, right?
Yeah, I mean, I used to worry about this stuff when I was a kid, about things like asteroids or global warming or things like that, or the wasn't so much global warming as I was when I was a kid. It was the what do you call it? The ozone layer, things like this. I just think, obviously, if there's things that we can do about it, things like the environment, we need to act. But I don't think it's worth losing sleep over. There's only so much we can do, and we can do what we can. But things like asteroids, I'm not involved in the space program. I'm not Bill Gates. I don't have $1 billion to give to asteroid defense. So I think you're better off not worrying about it and just hoping that there's a lot of smart people working on it.
It's one of those things that is they describe as a very low probability, very high consequence event. Just like gambling on crypto, for example. Like you want exposure to certain speculative assets with a small, very little chance of success, but high potential upside. This is kind of the opposite, where it's again low chance but very high downside. So the funding has been tripled from $50 million to $150 million because in the grand scheme of things, that's a drop in the bucket for the amount of damage that could possibly be avoided by you don't have to wipe out all of humanity. Just even wiping out a city is bad enough news, right? I've just been watching Foundation on Apple TV Plus, and no spoilers, but a bad thing happened that wiped out 100 million people or so on a planet's surface. That's those lives matter too, right? So Gray, what about the notion of the algorithms that are being worked on by NASA here to help with these the tracking and projected paths of asteroids?
I mean, this is a must-have part of the equation. Basically, if you're looking at this, the physics that's involved in shifting one of these things, even with your fully fueled kinetic impactor, there's a lot of math and there's a lot of number crunching that goes on here. So having a system that is in place that handles this, and hopefully has numerous installations around the place. That's always the thing in the movies, right? Is the one watch station goes down and then the asteroid gets through and it comes to steal your lunch money. We really do need, like, this is a key part of that. The interesting thing here is the same math that we're doing with this is the same math that hopefully we would be able to use to clean up space junk in our own closer orbits. Just being able to look at things and then figure out, okay, based on how these things are moving, based on the conditions out there, what can we predict that they will do? And I think we've seen a number of things in the last couple of months. Russia blew up one of their own satellites. There's bits everywhere. They really feel like the teenage frat boy just doesn't know how to clean up after themselves. But this is obviously its key part. So for some people, like a computer system that tracks all of this data and is able to give you reasonable predictions, because they're looking at things here where, like, the albedo, the reflected light of a given asteroid also actually comes with a heat coefficient, because as it's absorbing more sunlight, that can actually change the rotation and can change how things work. So it's not simply it's coming in this direction and it's this size. these things are twisting and rotating, and then we've also got other energy forces that are acting on them as they come into our sphere of influence. This is a lot of really interesting math, and it's math that could save our lives.
It seems like one of the greatest anticipated threats is coming with asteroid Bennu in 2135, which is just 5 years before the very last Bitcoin will be mined. So don't make any plans beyond that. Or spend your Bitcoin before then, perhaps, unless, of course, Elon Musk and NASA and others who are able to help us. And Bruce Willis, of course. We need to get Bruce Willis to help us save
Operation Animal Cracker.
So next up, so we've solved that problem. Now Amazon could use some help because did you guys experience any little glitches today online? Because AWS, Amazon Web Services, which powers a surprising amount of the internet's websites, it's a major outage today, especially on the East Coast of the United States. And if you look at downdetector.com, you can see this earlier this morning is when things kind of peaked and people were losing their minds. AWS, Netflix uses AWS, and all sorts of huge services that people rely on, not to mention just like hosting regular websites. Did either of you encounter any issues today at all? Will, you had mentioned you were wondering what was going on.
Yeah, there's just some stuff with some things that I do professionally, but
some highly secretive things.
Yeah,
tell you, but I'd have to kill you.
Yeah, I signed an NDA, guys.
Was it Disney Plus? Because Venmo, which is the Cash App in the US, and Disney Plus, not to mention Amazon itself, are all affected by the outage. So you can admit it.
Wasn't any of those.
You weren't watching Disney Plus during your workday?
No.
Okay.
It had to do with something that uses Amazon Web Services.
Gotcha. So, Gray, what does this speak to regarding the centralization and the fragility of the web as we know it? When we have, so many of these services are reliant on whether it's Amazon Web Services or Microsoft Azure or other cloud hosting providers. The web used to be, in some senses, a lot more decentralized. There was a lot more variety in the type of hosts out there. But because of the economies of scale that these cloud hosting providers present, it also increases the fragility in the system, does it not?
It does, yeah. And this is kind of the interesting thing. We mentioned crypto earlier, and in a lot of cases, proof of stake cryptocurrencies. When they do have things becoming too centralized, you will have people, they will move their stake to other delegators so that they're basically spreading out the impact of any one given delegator on the network. With something like AWS, I think everybody that uses it is probably thinking, yeah, it'd be really great if this wasn't as centralized as it is, but somebody else other than me can do the job of going somewhere else and possibly paying more and figuring that out. I've got my solution and I'm good. And we're seeing obviously the battle of the big boys on this one, between Google, Microsoft, Amazon. It's interesting to think because again, just these failures when they happen are catastrophic, and billions of dollars are lost in time and energy, and yet there's very little in the way of consequences for these companies. If water went down to a city, if electricity went down to a city, there would be an uproar. Internet goes down. We don't see it as the utility that it is. So that's kind of interesting. I missed this whole thing because Bungie launched the 30th anniversary pack for Destiny 2 today. And so I was playing that all day, getting weapons that looked like they came out of Marathon and Halo. And I streamed nothing. I spoke to no one. And that was my day.
I remember Marathon back in the 90s on my Mac. That was a good time. And I also remember how heartbroken when we were when Bungie got bought by Microsoft before the launch of Halo on the Mac to really show off the power of the Power Mac G4, I think. Don't even get me started.
But if they hadn't done that, we probably wouldn't have Destiny 2 now. So
I'll come back to Destiny.
I'll take it.
So now they none of their services were using AWS?
No.
or
mean,
at least not on the West Coast. That's the thing, is AWS is chunked up by region. So it was mostly
Yeah.
the East Coast that was having a
yeah.
problem. And, sometimes depending on, the luck of the draw, you may end up interfacing with a site based on the East Coast. But a lot of times, thanks to the way, CDNs or content delivery networks work, and the multiple locations for services like AWS, generally speaking, they're going to try to serve you up content as close to your location as possible. So we probably had a better time today than folks on the East Coast. But speaking of Amazon, there's a tool introduced by The Markup, which has been doing some really interesting investigative tech journalism over the last number of months, and often introducing web browser extensions as part of their investigations as well. And their latest is the Amazon brand detector. Now, Amazon has come under scrutiny by regulators around the world, government interests, for antitrust issues, perhaps favoring their own private label products in search results and so on. But the fact of the matter is, a lot of people don't even realize when they're looking at Amazon products. I mean, it's obvious when it's something called Amazon Basics, but there's a number of other brands that Amazon owns that are not so obvious. So the Markup introduced a browser extension that reveals Amazon brand and exclusive products while you shop on the site. And Amazon has registered more than 150 private label brands with the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office. So this is, in the, say, when you go to Costco, how a lot of stuff is Kirkland. Well, Costco only, I don't know if they have anything else besides Kirkland. They might. I mean, it's a pretty like basic sort of brand. Hey, folks, I'm sporting my Kirkland jeans and my Kirkland polo shirt. But, they do stuff that's cheap and reasonably good, et cetera, et cetera. And I don't know if they have much in the way of other brands, but Amazon has got, because they have just so many more SKUs than, say, a Costco does. Costco, they thrive on limited number of SKUs, so they don't need tons of brands. But Amazon, one of their criticisms of them is they compete so often with their own Amazon Marketplace merchants, because they have access to all the sales data and the trends and whatnot. So they can very easily spin up a new product line here. Gray, what are your thoughts on this whole notion of the private label? But is Amazon getting too big for its britches, and are tools like this the only way we can be fighting back? What else can we be doing here?
Well, I mean, the biggest thing is just basically having some gumption. And when you see something like, their Epsom salts, which is 9 cents an ounce versus 56 cents an ounce for everybody else, stomaching it and buying the non-Amazon brand, probably and preferably not from Amazon.
How about bath salts?
Your local drug dealer has that on the corner. But it's tough because, like, looking at this, you can see where, in some cases, it looks like they've just gone in and scooped up the line in China where some of these things were being made, and they're just pumping this stuff out in such a way that they're the Microsoft of the real world, right? The embrace, extend, exterminate. It's horrifying to see, and I feel like I've got a bit of an addiction. I've been like slowly weaning myself off Amazon, telling myself, if I buy it from Best Buy, it's going to take 2 more days to get here and it'll be fine. I don't need it tomorrow. But I think we actually, this is a serious one. We really have to look at this company and say, the way that they treat their vendors is borderline criminal. They're a mess inside. And I can tell you this from actually having been inside this machine as we worked with some of our clients. And they let 700 of their internal reps go at a key time during the pandemic. So a lot of companies were just sitting there going, we don't know how to talk to our own consumers on this. We can't, you send a price change to Amazon saying, like, costs have gone up, so price has to go up. And they would just reject the cost increase. It's
much
just
power.
Yeah, just absolutely insane. This is honestly, like, out of the 3 between Google, they want to be called Meta, but Facebook and Amazon, I'd say Amazon's probably the most dangerous. Facebook is slowly being neutered and it's less dangerous, and Google is just tiresome.
How dangerous is Apple? Don't forget them.
The thing with Apple is that there is a vast majority of people that don't use their products. They will never be a danger to the world because they're never going to break out here. And that's okay. It's actually a good place for them to be. I'd love to see more companies like them. And actually, I'd love to see smaller regional players as well.
Mhm.
But Apple...
That might be true worldwide, but in North America, they've just broke the 50% mark in iPhone smartphone market share for the iPhone. So on a regional basis, you could contend that Apple is approaching, borderline monopoly sort of status. Hence, a lot of the attention, especially regarding the App Store.
Yeah,
their
competitors should stop making terrible phones.
All right, we're not going to talk about too much about Apple, but I think it's important. Like there's a lot of big players, and the more power they get, the more they have to be kept in check. And to be fair, like Amazon has provided an amazing service to hundreds of millions of people, if not more, around the world, being able to get things so quickly. But that stuff comes at a price. The pressure on the supply chain, the pressure on vendors, and the pressure on the environment when stuff shipping around. One could argue that that's better than driving to malls all over the place.
All of this stuff is solvable, though.
Yeah, you got all sorts of cardboard boxes going. They're moving from plastic padded bags to cardboard ones, so that's a step in the right direction. But Will, with your Christmas shopping and whatnot, have you been pretty Amazon centric, or what have you been shopping? So I can find out what you got me.
Yeah. Like Gray, we're trying to reduce Amazon a bit. I think there is a lot of dodgy stuff with knowing where things are coming from, and not just Amazon, but there's other companies that are coming from other places in the world or are knocking off other brands and things like that. So it's a little bit of the wild, wild west. And this is, there's many, many good things about the internet, many good things about some of these big companies, even though we often talk about their bad things, but a lot of them do good things as well, or have added to society in some way. But at the same time, there's a lot of negatives, right? There's a lot of, squeezing out the little guy, squeezing out other brands.
Like Walmart 20 years ago, basically.
Yeah, Walmart 20 years ago. This is where it's put the pressure on, many other companies. And even we're seeing some of what Amazon kind of introduced with online shopping has really compacted the supply chain with all the problems that we're having in terms of global resourcing and global transportation, because we're relying more on this, using this unregulated, unmonitored system of online stores that are picking everything from cheap countries. It adds more strain when you put any kind of A, resource problem, and B, increased demand. We're not necessarily seeing people, pick that up. Even things like in North America, there's a lack of drivers, so even if you were to get something from China to North America, can you get it from the port of Vancouver to Calgary? Is somebody going to drive that?
Got to get through those highways first.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's a whole another problem. So I think the whole long point is, so we put all of our faith in this. We put all our faith in Amazon, and they're doing these shady business practices. On top of it, this has caused a problem with our supply chain, where we don't go to our local retailer anymore because they've driven them first Walmart. If they survived Walmart, now they got to deal with Amazon. So I think it's the cheapest way to get a mass market of things, but specialty items you can't get. And B, like Ray says, it's hard when they do these business practices. You kind of feel like, do you need to do that stuff? Because you're already making like $1 gazillion. You're going to space. How many ivory back scratchers and orbital space stations do you need? Like, you're already making a ton of money. Why do you need to do this underhanded stuff?
So just touching on the logistics issue, it's interesting because Amazon is actually working on developing their own parallel logistics system and tapping into unused capacity on tractor trailers by building larger than normal shipping containers, because the standard shipping containers that go on ships actually are shorter than the average deck on a tractor trailer. So they're looking at building larger, and this isn't a story we're officially covering today. It's just because it's kind of wonky and boring logistics stuff, but it's kind of fascinating in that in the way that AWS, they built, some argued that they were building that as the Amazon Web Services as a way to kind of host their own huge multinational online store. In the same kind of way, like in order to vertically integrate, they are taking more and more ownership of the logistics to get product from, supplier A to warehouse B to local customer C. And the more that
doesn't that create even more problems for the small guy? Like if they're taking over the logistics system or mirroring the logistics system so that they have
one
their
could
own
argue that it
private
actually
army?
frees one could argue that it actually frees up capacity in the standard logistics system. So I mean, I'm not a logistics expert. Actually, if there's a fascinating podcast a few years ago called Containers, which I would highly recommend. It's all about just the history of the standardization of the shipping container. Again, sounds super boring, but it's actually really interesting. So I mean, it's interesting just to see how they're thinking. It's kind of like what Apple's doing in their own way with trying to control and own as much of the critical parts of their business as possible. And now we've got Apple Silicon, making its way to it's from Apple iPhones and iPads all the way to its Mac computers now. So I mean, it's doing what it's incentivized to do, and that's the way capitalism works, and so on. And the fewer other parties you have to rely on, kind of the better. But again, the more centralized things get, the more fragile they get. I mean, Amazon is
a give and take, right?
Yeah, Amazon is interesting because with the Amazon Marketplace, they have access to tens of thousands of third-party marketplace sellers. But then when it's shipping through Amazon, Amazon becomes that choke point, the logistics that you alluded to there. So there is still some fragility in the system, but. Yeah, so TBD how that works out. But I think we've mentioned this before. Gray, you weren't with us. Just the general notion, especially this time of year, if we're doing any Christmas shopping for loved ones, to check out our options. A lot of times, Amazon isn't the cheapest, right? If I'm looking at books, I'll always check Indigo as well. Long-time Canadian retailer, a product of mergers between Indigo and Chapters and Smith Books and the Book Company and Kohl's. That there's a lot of consolidation there, kind of out of necessity. But sometimes they're cheap or even pretty close. And if they're even close enough, within a couple bucks, I'll go with them because at least it's a Canadian company. Yeah. Gray, you mentioned Best Buy. Same kind of thing. I'll check if Best Buy is close. I'll order from them. I mean, that's still a U.S. multinational company, but not as big as Amazon, and they do have dogs in their warehouse. They do have a lot of retail employees on the ground. I mean, Amazon has drivers working for them too, so there is still local jobs regardless. But the more we can keep the dollars closer to home, increase that velocity of money in the local economy, I think is a good thing. And Amazon's great for lots of things. I mean, it's a modern miracle what they've accomplished. But if we're able to keep other options open and not and try to remember that there's more to retail than Amazon, because it's so easy, because it's so convenient to just check Amazon first and then not even look anywhere else. So
it just seems to me, I know we're sort of buttoning this up, but just one point to circle back on, and I totally agree. And like I started and said that Amazon does a lot of great things, and they revolutionized how we buy things online, and they're setting up this separate system and really pushing the limits on how fast we get things. Again, it seems to me that's all great, but it's just the little things that they don't have to do, that they do just because it makes more money, like treat their workers in some places like crap, and push quotas and all that kind of stuff. And maybe that's what gets them the results. But and even this thing like stealing other people's ideas or seeing what products are successful and squeezing them out. It's like, you don't have to do that. You're already doing all this other stuff so well. Why do you need to do that?
Growth.
Yeah.
So that's the way it works, right? I mean, just growth.
Infiltrate and destroy is their model.
All right. So looking at the clock here, let's just touch on one more quick thing. There's another topic which is much larger that we'll get into another time, but a little bit of fun. It's only a couple of weeks away until Matrix Resurrections movie, but before then, we get Matrix Awakens on December 9th, Epic's Games will be releasing this interactive tie-in to Matrix Resurrections. You can preload the demo onto your PlayStation 5 or Xbox Series X or Series S console ahead of the debut at the Game Awards. And this was built using the Unreal 5 engine. And I think we're past the uncanny valley now, and at least when it comes to Keanu, this is a digitally generated Keanu Reeves using the Unreal Engine, which apparently isn't just for games anymore. It's being used for TV and film production too. But look at that, Keanu Reeves right there. Now, Gray, I know that in your universe there are no other games than Destiny, but what are your initial thoughts on what we're seeing here?
This is interesting because the Matrix is actually never really made for good games.
Yeah,
there were a couple of games that had come out. One basically took place between I think the second and the third movie. There was the Matrix Online, and they were never really that great. The movies did a much better job of telling the story. But looking at this is the representations of Keanu Reeves as a digital human, which when you go back and watch the original Matrix versus got Johnny Silverhand up there. And then we can see this today.
So many more polygons. You can't even see them anymore.
Yeah, it's really got to the point where I think you're right. I think we are past the uncanny valley. I think back to Final Fantasy the movie. And
speaking of which, yeah.
Yep, and what was the other one? The Polar Express. They weren't quite there, right? I can hear the whoa out of this picture. So. Yeah.
Now, Gray's the only one here with a PS5. Will, you going to try and double down and get yourself a PS5 to play some the Matrix Awakens here, or what?
We haven't really been looking. It's something that I've been thinking about off and on. But I think there's still a global shortage of them. But maybe in 2022 we'll look at getting one. Yeah,
maybe Gray could hook you up. He seemed to get his very early.
That's all due to a friend of the show, Ged Smythe. I got a call right at launch. One of his friends had managed to get 2 pre-orders, and I said, yes, I take it. And that was that. All done. Right. So I can't take credit from that one. I've had a year of amazing gaming thanks to Ged and his friends. So.
Well, looking forward to the Matrix Resurrections, which I believe comes out on December 22nd as well. Let's see if Neo there looks as good in that movie as he does in the Matrix Awakens video game. Tough competition now. So maybe that's the metaverse. It's happening on Unreal Engine, right? Ooh. So she's not with us in person this week, but Tasia Custody has a new video for us on the YouTubes, and that is the best M1 Max MacBook Pro accessories. So I think she's humble bragging there that she got herself an M1 Max MacBook Pro, as did you, Gray, and as did you, Will, you were just setting yours up this week. I'm the only one here without an M1 Max MacBook Pro. I've got my lowly M1 MacBook Air, which is serving me just fine for now. I'm waiting for some sort of M series iMac maybe next year because I was all laptop all the time for a couple of decades, and then I finally discovered the glory of the iMac experience and going just as thin and light as possible on the MacBook Air, which I've been enjoying. But so check out Tasia's latest video at youtube.com/Tasia Custody and all her work at TasiaCustody.com as well. Any other projects from you, gents? Will, you've got some beats coming, but not live yet.
Yeah, I was going to announce something tonight, but there's a little bit of a fly in the ointment there with somebody else. So hope to be announcing it soon. It's really exciting. I also am working on my own project coming up soon. Again, stay tuned. Next week or so, I should have some info on those 2 projects.
We can't wait. How about you, Gray? Any more gigs coming up or anything else to report?
I've got a couple of private parties that I'm playing over the next little while. My parents are coming to town. I'm excited about that. But other than that, I've got the rest of the year off. So nice. A little bit of rest and relaxation and kind of letting the burnout perhaps seep away. I think that's the goal. So some Destiny, hanging out with you guys.
Karaoke. Yes, we're long overdue. We got to share some aerosols.
Yep.
Omicron. If you want to learn more about Momentous, you can Join us at momentous.tv, twitter.com/momentoustv, facebook.com/momentoustv, instagram.com/momentus.tv. On YouTube, search my name and look for Momentous playlist there, and you can subscribe to the Momentous channel. Will, Gray, thank you so much as always. Best day of the week. Hopefully Tasia will be back with us next week. And to you and everyone else, I hope your week is truly momentous.